Hi, I'm Monica and shall be your host and the coordinator for this webinar today. Foremost, I'd like to thank you all for the overwhelming response we have obtained for this webinar, and we have participants from across the globe representing different verticals. Let me introduce you to our speakers for the day. We have Craig Leclerc from Forrester, followed by Ashish Deshmukh from Newgen Software. Craig is a distinguished Forrester analyst and is widely known as the guru of customer communication management. Ashish is a specialist in customer communication domain with focus on banking, insurance, and healthcare payers. At the end of these two presentations, we will be having the question and answer session. We request you to type your questions in the question window of your GoToMeeting anytime during the webinar, and I shall take them up with our experts at the end of the session. Craig, over to you now.
Well, thank you. That was a great introduction. And I want to extend my welcome to everyone on the call across the globe on this very important topic of customer experiences and how customer communications can help them. We have quite a bit of content, so I want to jump right into it. And if you had to pick one overall theme, it is that targeted communications are really smarter communications. So a lot of what consumers and business partners are expecting is much more personalized, much more targeted communications, and they want it at the time they want it in the channel that they want it. So smarter communications is really what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about the better customer experiences, and I'm going to talk about some specific return on investment aspects of CCM, and close with some recommendations. So to start, this is Forrester's framework for customer communications. So we've divided them into three categories, as you see here. The most well-known and traditional area of communications are what we call structured. And these are recurring statements or bills that are sent out routinely on a schedule, monthly or quarterly, to customers. In parlance of CCM, it was often called variable data printing. So you went into a transaction system and you grabbed the variable data and you matched it with a composed template that might have pie charts and it might have very interesting fonts, and you created a giant batch of print stream that might be in an arcane language like AFP or Xerox Metacode, and then you moved that out to high-speed printers and sent it out into the mail stream. And so this is really how the software industry for customer communications started, and there's still quite a bit of that transactional or structured content going out to folks today. Of course, that's being offset by increased electronic adoption, but still adoption rates are hovering around 20%, not that high for individuals to consent to suppress the paper and just receive electronic statements. So this is a very stable and mature aspect of customer communications. Now, when you move to the right, the more exciting areas, because they can affect customer experience so well, and because of all of the movements towards multi-channel and the empowered consumer, is the interactive and the on-demand category. So interactive has areas like you see there, business correspondence. So this might be your call center creation of a letter that's going out. It maybe goes out with some review. So one of the big drivers in this market today is improved correspondence management. Other applications or use cases in that interactive category are welcome kits or retirement benefit books. Now, these are traditionally prepared via manual compilation of static and offset generated print materials, and mailed out. That is the traditional offset and fulfillment environment, and that's moving towards print-on-demand applications that are fronted by the interactive customer communications management software. So imagine you have a web-based authoring environment. You're going in and selecting forms and templates, maybe based on a document set that you can review from a content perspective and what it looks like in multiple channels. So presented on the web, you can see that. So this set of tools that's enabling this shift from offset to print on demand is very high value and growing rapidly in the market. So that's when I refer to interactive communications. That's that category of use cases. Now, on-demand is the fastest growing but smallest. So in the on-demand space, the idea there is that you have an event or a transaction system change, and you're automatically going to generate an output to an individual or to a business partner. So the easiest example is the travel itineraries. As soon as that agent hits that return key, it's going and grabbing the data from the Sabre or the Apollo global reservation system. It's mapping it to an email template, and it's sent to you automatically. No human being reviews that. So that's an example of on-demand communications. So a lot of the focus for companies is how do you move from both print in that structured area to get electronic adoption. How do you take interactive that involve a lot of human effort to push out? How do you move that to on-demand? So a lot of activity in this very exciting market. So the big challenge that firms have is multi-channel, and I'll talk more about that, what I mean by that. But there really are 4 or 5 different formats that are relevant for multi-channel. You obviously have print. You have email. An email might contain a PDF of a document. You have HTML. And increasingly HTML5 or rich HTML. You have text messaging or SMS. You have RSS feeds where you might want to put information out on a website. So because most of the communications today is of that structured category, and the important information, the transactional content, are in those transaction systems almost protected by that print-centric structured area, one of the challenges is how do you unleash that content and push it out to these new ways that consumers want to interact with their companies. Another challenge is, again, in that structured area, a lot of those systems were put in on mainframe systems. They're very costly to maintain. It's very much an IT-centric solution, so you have a lot of infrastructure there. In the correspondence management area, there are a lot of correspondence solutions that are built with very point solution tools that are very tailored to a specific scenario, like a call center, that may not be able to be used generally. And there are a lot of Microsoft Word-based applications out there, some 30,000, 40,000 of them, we believe, that are on 2003 or older versions that have templates maintained with Visual Basic logic and code. They're using mail merge or something in the back end, and they all are going to need to be replaced over time, and that's something that IT doesn't want to do. So the fourth bullet there, it relates to that in that the newer systems coming online, the business wants to be able to do very content-oriented aspects of the system. So they want to maintain templates. They want to change rules around when things are sent. And they want to be able to edit content as fragments that are part of these larger and more extended documents. So the business users in the traditional systems today really have to go to IT to manage those types of changes. One company still has their letters maintained with COBOL programs. So they're in the health insurance area that's undergoing a lot of regulatory change. So they cannot sustain a system that requires IT to make a change in a COBOL program to change a format of a letter. So this is an example very pervasive in the industry. Regulations very important to be able to respond to those. And integration with the marketing databases. When we talked about targeted communications, this is really about getting to the more strategic information that are in your Siebel and your Salesforce.com, that are in your marketing databases where you have your customers segmented and you have their profiles. You can get to much more targeted communications if you can integrate with them, but that's a challenge. That's been a challenge for a lot of companies to open up that information to their output technologies. So the big issue with companies today is that they have way too many systems that do output. They've been built on a project basis. They've been built on a departmental basis. The big movement is towards trying to come up with what we call corporate solutions or shared services for CCM, and we'll talk more about that. Now, underlying all of these trends is just this rapid movement to online communications. And what I like about this chart is it shows that it's increasing across the demographics. So it's not just the Gen Ys and Gen Xs or the younger boomers, it's really the seniors. So everyone is spending time online, and increasingly in social networks. So, 20% now of time spent online is on social networks. So there's a pervasive increase in being online. And the bulk of that time online is spent communicating. So if you look at the communication activities, it's email, it's instant messaging, browsing social networks. I would almost lump that in with communication, and browsing websites and so forth. So that is not going to stop anytime soon. So what does this mean in terms of your information workers, which we define as individuals between, broadly between 18 and 88, in which they use a computer or a connected device. So a very broad definition of that. Now here are some iWorkers. We tend to segment them so that when you're looking at retooling your customer communications in your firm, you have to recognize that there are workforce personas in your company that are different. And so the type of communications support you might have for, say, Diane to communicate with her extended world in work may be different than what you would do for Andy, who is just an occasional iWorker. And certainly you have the mobile professional who is on the road all the time, always mobile. That there's a different set of tools to support them. So just the idea that when you're thinking of customer communications, you're really thinking of how your internal employees or your iWorkers are able to enable better communication. So you have to think in terms of how are we going to support them in being, making them heroes to be able to, innovate around the customer experience. So I mentioned HEROES. That's an acronym. That's not one of my favorites, but it's a Forrester acronym that stands for highly effective and resourceful operatives. So what that means is that they're individuals in companies that are being innovative. They're looking at how to use video, how to use cloud computing, how to use mobility to better communicate with their customers. So we've surveyed all these industries to determine, how many heroes there were, or whether employees or information workers were disenfranchised or locked down, or rogue employees who just go and do things without any sanction from the company. And in this case, customer service representatives feel really locked down. They're so heavily scripted, and they feel disenfranchised and that they can't really affect it, right? So we've got to open things up to allow a real social business to occur and much better interaction. And the real tension here is that the consumer is just racing ahead with technology. They're on Facebook, they're on social networks, they're doing things from their mobile device, and the iWorker that is working for your company is still, looking at the faxes coming in, can't send an email because it's not approved, can't really communicate in the appropriate way. So there's this growing tension and gap, and that's the gap we need to close. We need to empower the information worker to have much better communications. So, how do you do this? Well, the first thing is to take a look at your systems from a more holistic view. And it's always difficult because these systems are pervasive at companies. They're not easy to change. There's change management. There are organizational issues. But you really have to take a look at it from the way the customer views it. And this is our framework for doing that, where you have an inbound channel and an outbound channel. Now, on the inbound, you have traditional content management or transaction management, where you may be accepting account opening forms. You may be, getting account opening kits. You may be getting other forms coming in, and you're capturing them and putting them through a document process. That's very important. You have your website, which is where all the investment is going, to try to create better search and digital advertising, to use web analytics so that you can personalize. The level of personalization you can do in that interactive marketing area is higher than any other area. That's why that investment's there. It's a movement to the web. So on the inbound side, you have these types of technologies, and of course you have your contact center. So that's a traditional call center environment. These are all inbound channels. Now, when you look at the outbound, you've got the multi-channel environment supported by web content management, digital asset management. You've got email campaigns. You have traditional structured, interactive, and on-demand communication shown there. So the challenge here is how do you integrate these so that the marketing data that gives you that personalization and can leverage the mining and analytics and really make that outbound communication much more effective. So the challenge is to break down these stovepipes and try to get synergy among these departments in a holistic way. And customer communications management is a way to do that. So along with this, you're looking at shifts in emphasis for these channels. So firms are planning more self-service automation, so that's affecting that inbound interactive channel that we saw. It's affecting the communication outbound. So you see that firms are really geared up to look for more self-service automation. A lot of the content that's going out, these are the elements that are really important for smart communications. Authoring, you need template management. You've got to have, you can't have templates on file shares all over the company. You got to have them in a system that allows you to edit the content as fragments, maintain version control on the templates. You need form and interview guides that can pull together the forms and the information you need in a very constructive way, so that any type of communication can be organized more easily, by the information worker. So that's a front end that's very, very important. XML is important because ultimately you're going to have these 5 channels. You don't want to have a separate template for each channel. What you want to do is have the content, maintained in some XML form, so that at the last moment on and the template in an XML form, and then at the last minute, depending on the channel, you can convert that to SMS. You can convert that to print formats and so forth. So usability authoring environments is very, very important. You want this to be web-based, so all the authoring for content is web-based, so that it can move to the cloud. Maybe you can have an alternative to have a hybrid solution where some like correspondence management is in the cloud, but structured is behind your firewall. Content management support is critical. So all of this content that is being managed needs to be in a real ECM system. And the workflow that you're using should be a real business process management solution, so that you can look at process models and you can maintain rules within that environment. You need event management and handling, because you're going to move to that on-demand segment, which is really based on events. So these are all really, really important components towards smart communications. And I've talked a lot, I think, so far about the marketing support, the ability to personalize, getting good integration into those marketing databases. So the overall movement of the industry is from this current market of still dominated by the numbers in terms of fulfillment and mailrooms and forms management and commercial printing and transaction printing, direct mail. You look at the Postal Service numbers, direct mail is just falling every year. But still, there's way more of that than anything else. And the problem with that is it's limited personalization and limited volume capabilities in certain areas, and limited flexibility. So the current growth areas are the interactive areas and that on-demand area that I talked about. Ultimately, you want more of a collaborative content customization. So think of this as you move into real social business where you're completely transparent with your business partners under security, but you're interacting with experts within your company, and through a social type environment, you're interacting through the key aspects of your customers. It's very transparent, and the content is being organized within that social environment. So that's ultimately where things are going, but we're not there yet. We're in this segment in the middle where you're just trying to take more traditional type communications and move them into a multi-channel and a more agile environment. But ultimately, there's going to be a new way of doing business that's much less functionally siloed and much more leveraging social capability as it moves into the business. So to get to that middle space, we need different types of output infrastructures. So on the top here, this is the traditional environment that really was built around that structured use case area. You had your transaction system I mentioned. You have a structured document output for customer communications management capability. It was one-way communication. It went to the print channel only. You took that print stream, you put it in a cold system or report management system. You could then do e-delivery, collect your consents for suppression, and move it out. That's your traditional, DOCM solution. Now, what's new is that, we're looking at on-demand DOCM and interactive DOCM. So you're moving more towards a conversation. You're not there yet, but you're moving more towards a conversation. You have, websites and social networks, text and email inquiries you have to respond to. You're going to push out content to SMS text aggregators. You're going to push it out to these channels on the right. You're going to link with mobile application providers that are building mobile applications that want your content. So, this is the architecture that you should think about, developing to meet the multi-channel, requirements. So when you look at the ROI, when we talk to clients, the main area of interest in terms of their investment is the interactive content area. So remember that the three parts of the customer communications management landscape, that interactive content, those benefit books, again, high ROI, moving from traditional fulfillment to print on demand with that web-based authoring environment, replacing older correspondence management solutions. So even though there's cost savings on the structure side, that's mostly consolidation of existing systems. There's, the interactive area is one where you're coming in with new applications, correspondence management as a service to be used across the organization. Those are the top areas, and those are the ones that have the highest ROIs right now. Now, obviously, on-demand output is terrific and the lowest cost area, but that's still a little further out there in terms of the customers that we interviewed. So a lot of the ROI we see on the structured side is driven by consolidations, and also on the interactive side. So many organizations use legacy mainframe systems, have multiple systems to print, email, and do web delivery. So if you consolidate and integrate the content, then it's a much better way to do it. This is a quote from one of the folks we interviewed that that really was able to save quite a bit of money by putting a lot of the communications in XML format and doing that multi-channel conversion that we talked about. This is the real ROI gain, is when you look at shared services for cost reduction. So this is a typical framework that Forrester often helps clients put together, where they might have 25, 35, 45 different output solutions. So we try to break them into use cases around that three segment framework that we first introduced. There's a way to take that framework and say, okay, for my organization, if I want to build corporate solutions and I want to leverage them across departments, what might be those categories? Now, you notice here there's not one solution for everything. There is specialization. So you take that marketing area, that outreach area. You might have something that really is strong with Adobe InDesign and Quark for making those sort of rich documents that you might need for campaigns. And you might link that very carefully with your campaign and list management system as part of your CRM. So the outbound marketing-oriented may be one segment in your organization. You may have a field organization that just wants a really strong pitch book system, which is a way for them to have a self-directed manner to pull together content to go out and see a customer. You want that under some control in most organizations, and you want them to be able to tailor it so it needs to be in a Microsoft or personal productivity application of a company's choice. But you really can reduce a lot of costs and get more consistency across the organization. So a pitch book application might be a use case. You might have publishing and correspondence. You may have something to do enrollment and benefit books that's doing it for multiple lines of business. I've seen companies that have a different enrollment solution for different segments of their customer base within one line of business. So they might have 20 total in the company. They're really all doing the same thing. It's much better to have one that you can really build and harden and have a portal capability for customers to access the information and so forth. And I talked about correspondence management. Insurance companies, for example, have many different lines of business that they call them, different lines that they insure, and each one may have a correspondence solution that's built into the policy and admin system that really runs that business. That's the structured system of record for that business. So the movement there is to take correspondence management, treat it as a service, and have it support multiple lines of business. And you do that, why? So that you can get consistent branding, so that you can have the rules exposed for when to communicate. So you can look like you're one company instead of 27. So this is just a framework to go to, shared services. In the structured area, regulatory, commercial printing, statements and bills, traditional fulfillment, you shouldn't have, 4 different solutions doing statements and bills. You should pick one underlying solution and migrate to that and save, on money. So from the ROI perspective, I see companies going towards this type of approach. So this is for a very large system that had lots of eye workers in call centers. This was going to a new correspondence management solution. These are some numbers. This is from a published report, the ROI of correspondence management that Forrester produced. And you see the very, very high benefits in year 2 that really drives a very, very high payback within 12 months, very, very high return. So this is, getting rid of like 4 or 5 different correspondence management solutions. It's being able to produce a lot of the content in electronic form so that it's not a print-first mentality. So there were savings in terms of suppression of paper and mail. There was savings in terms of consolidation of systems. There were savings in terms of the employees required on the IT side to manage templates, to have to affect changes to templates. They literally had 10, 15, individuals that did various aspects of maintenance to the old system because the templates were stored and managed in very specific arcane IT environments. There was no business side control and empowerment of the template management function. So all in all, just a tremendous project. These are, if you look at the benefits of correspondence management, you absolutely have reduced compliance risk. You can really leverage workflow for multi-level approvals. So you're ensuring that mistakes are not being made as often anyway. You ensure that the documents can be stored or retrieved appropriately. In many call centers for correspondence, the agent has to go into different transaction logs to figure out what the customer has been sent. this gives you the ECM component for correspondence management, really gives you the ability to find what the customer was sent in an interesting way, in a very quick way. So auditing capabilities, just to determine what you've sent to a customer that may have been received or sent from a number of different departments, and what the effectivity of that is. So when you have more of a shared solution for correspondence, in this case, you end up getting this rich set of metadata that you can analyze the effectivity of the communications, something that doesn't exist in the previous system studied here. So content efficiency, again, that template management I've talked a lot about, and the cost savings. As I mentioned, maintenance and mainframe costs, consolidating vendors, reducing paper printing and postage. And most importantly, just improve customer service, providing reps with real-time access to customer documents. So finally, just a few recommendations. This is from a best practices document in this area that I published in 2009. But in terms of best practices, take that multi-channel and customer view. Augment the DOCM with ECM and BPM. So don't think of it as just this isolated stack of technology and set of use cases. Think of it as part of your overall content management strategy. That's really what it is. Empower business users. Try to figure out what you want the business to do, and be sure any solution you're bringing in allows you to do that. And really go to that shared services model, that solutions view that we talked about. Take a look at what you have that can be leveraged in-house and what you need, where your gaps are in terms of creating corporate solutions across a segmented view like the one we showed. Now, next practices, we never just want to have best practices, because those are ones that people are already doing, and you want to look towards how do I get ahead of other companies. So, know your customer, align output accordingly. Take a look at schemas and metadata and XML to be able to segment customers and move more towards that really targeted view. Take a much broader use of BPM. Again, business process management being a more capable form of workflow that allows you to do modeling and take a real process view. Optimize remaining solutions and engage with vendors supplying the technology. The vendors out there all have very interesting solutions, and they're worth talking to understand how to move from where you are. So finally, focus on that I worker. Understand what customer experience means, across that inbound, outbound view that I talked about. Analyze the pain and the gain. Move customers to online, and build ROI models that can show both an improvement in customer experience, but also lowering costs due to on-demand communications, for example. And just look at the web multi-channel customer experience, and think about smart and more personalized communications. And take a look at online communities and social. So when you're looking at moving to social business, that should be a lens to look at, not just where we were trying to get traditional communications to be multi-channel, but what's beyond that is to move multi-channel communications to social business. And with that, I will turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. That was very informative. Ashish, you may please continue with your presentation now.
Hi, thanks, Craig. This was really informative and thought-provoking. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the people on this conference call today. Thanks for taking out time for this session on customer communication management. Is my screen visible? Okay, so just to kick off the whole discussion, Craig has taken a deep dive into the customer communication management space, and what I'm going to do in next 15 minutes is in terms of taking real-life examples from our customers and what we have been hearing in the market, and taking a perspective of that and bringing it to the table in terms of what are the real benefits and what does this stream actually have for the strategy as a strategy for organizations who are just trying to get into the customer communication management space. A little bit in terms of what is our definition of customer communication management, and all this is basis what we have heard and what we have experienced with a lot of our customers across different verticals. People do come back to us and they talk about business empowerment, which is certainly one of the core areas that organizations are looking in for from a customer communication management solution. Today, the competitive forces favor the faster, cheaper, and the better. And customers today are demanding speed and quality to meet these requirements. I think the important aspect over there is in terms of are the business users empowered enough to make changes to the communication as it is required from the customer's perspective as well as from the changing regulatory compliance perspective. And giving the controls back to the business actually helps a lot in terms of reducing the dependencies on the internal IT organization, which can actually spend their time in more strategic initiatives. It actually helps in reducing the domain divide, increases the responsiveness, and certainly aligns the organization with the operational goals that they have from the customer perspective. From the speed and agility perspective, this is the second highest driver based upon our survey done on the customers, and that is what they actually expect from a customer communication management solution. Most of the organizations today are moving towards an adaptive enterprise, wherein the speed and agility of the communication is not only expected but for reaching out to their customers much faster, but I think it is most important in terms of being an agile organization in terms of not only meeting the expectations from the product launch perspective, but also from the changing regulatory guidelines, in which case you have to manage both the time required to actually get across to the customers and also in terms of meeting the guidelines given by the regulators. Another important component, and this is specific to our customers in the insurance and the financial services space, where the risk and compliance associated with communication is one of the foremost parameters that actually gives the operations people sleepless nights. Not only in terms of the content that needs to follow a standardization, but I think an ability or inability to meet these set standards and an ability to track and control what's going out to the customers, I think is one of the foremost parameters that any kind of customer communication management solution need to manage. Cost and revenue, certainly the driving and the core factor for organizations. As Craig did mention in his presentation on the ROI stats, I think what we have noticed is that in the first year of operation itself, the revenues related to a customer communication management solution and the cost that you can actually bring down are to the upside of 15 to 20% of your actual communication cost, and which actually means a lot to organizations when it comes down to looking at it from the revenue streams perspective. We actually follow a methodology in terms of a customer communication management solution being a solution which actually gives you some kind of a dashboard of what's happening across the organization. And that's where an integrated approach towards a content management, business process management, and a customer communication management solution makes a lot of sense, because the solution, which is a unified and an integrated solution, gives you not only the compliance perspective from availability of the documents, but I think what is most important is that being an integrated solution, it gives you three core benefits of rules, routing, and resolution, and creating reports out of it in terms of a dashboard. What is most important for organizations also is in terms of the marketing aspect of differentiating their customers. One of our customers has taken a step ahead in terms of going ahead with differentiating their customers, especially in the wealth management space, and making offers to these customers, as well as sending communication to these customers depending upon their customer profiling. And any sort of targeted and focused communication in this respect not only helps you retain a customer but also helps you in your upselling and cross-selling opportunities. Collaboration between an organizational workers is certainly one of the core important areas, because in the absence of any collaboration, what's happened is that customer communication management is still going on in an organization in a manual manner. There are handoffs, there are errors, there are chances that the communication will get delayed, there might be compliance breaches. But with the proper collaborative mechanism, your dependence on people and the knowledge possessed by those people reduces, and the controls are more in terms of systems and processes. And finally, it's a strategy to outcompete because of your communication that's going out to the customer, which is right the first time. A little bit about our customer communication management framework. We certainly talk in terms of a content management, business process management, and a communication management capabilities across the document lifecycle. And why we say a document lifecycle is more from the perspective of, in more than 60% of the organizations that we have been working with, when we started off with the projects, at that point of time, communication management was a siloed application in bits and pieces across the organization without talking to each other. Now, this particular approach is something that we try to improve in organizations through an integrated and unified framework. Just a quick minute on the organization. Newgen as an organization has been in business for more than 19 years now. We have more than 800 customers across 40 countries. As an organization with a global spread, we understand that there are best practices that can evolve from both the developing world, the emerging economies, and the developed world. And what we try to do is to ascertain that all these best practices get accumulated, and we consolidate these best practices to bring it back to our customers in various parts of the world, so that they get the best of breed solutions from the different best practices that we have gathered. As an organization, we certainly have got more than 35 patents in this area, and we certainly are progressing towards a much better solutions for the market space. A little bit on the geographical spread of our organization. So if you would see that, we are quite well spread across the globe, and the experiences from all these geographies certainly help a lot in terms of us evolving our solutions. A representative list of our customers, which is spread across banking, financial services, insurance, back offices, shared services, and a couple of them from the manufacturing streams too. When we actually target for key focus verticals, and people on this webinar would be from different verticals, so there are different applications which actually make sense to different verticals. For example, in case of banking, it certainly would be related to onboarding correspondences, statement consolidation, and presentment. And there is a value chain that each of these organizations in these verticals have taken, starting from base applications like correspondence generation, going above that to a trans-promo kind of solutions wherein marketing content and marketing repositories are involved, and then again creating campaigns out of it. So if you look at the value chain, it starts with base applications going down to the applications wherein CCM, instead of being an operational tool, it becomes a revenue generating tool for the organization, and that's where we want our customers to be. This is the unified automation framework that we have been talking about, and as Craig also mentioned in his presentation, organizations certainly need to move towards a framework wherein they have content capture capabilities. They should have consolidation of inputs from various sources. They should have a BPM engine or a business process management engine that helps them with the rules management, and a state-through processing, which again is becoming very important component of the communication strategy of an organization, reducing the manual handoffs and the errors. A reporting dashboard becoming a very critical component for the management to view the entire life cycle of customer communication management. As one of our customers rightly puts it, is that the CCN solution has helped him in terms of dissecting the entire communication life cycle of the organization, understanding at what stages the communication is, and getting alerts and escalations before he enters a phase of surprises. So I think that's very important, that you have a real-time reporting dashboard that not only gives you a perspective of what's happening across the organization, but actually throws alerts even before those alerts become surprises. A customer communication management solution certainly is the overlying framework that helps you design, develop, consolidate, and distribute documents and statements across the organization. And finally, it's an archival solution through a content management engine that helps you archive the outbound communications sent across to the customer. And the biggest advantage of this whole framework is that with a content management engine aligned, the contact center people, so we are taking a solution of customer communication management from the back office to the front office. And that is where it makes a lot of sense to the organization, because there's this huge back office black hole which exists in a lot of organizations, because the work that is actually going to the back office requires time, requires resources, and requires cost. And if you're able to handle at least 25 to 30% of that work at the front office level itself, I think there's a huge value that the organization gains, both in terms of responsiveness to your customers and also in terms of reduction of cost by approximately 20% in the first year of operations, reducing not only the FTs but also in terms of the response times. This is the solution framework that we have. So starting from data capture to creation and designing of output, approval workflow, which is certainly a very important component, because of the reason, let's take a quick example in that. In one of the healthcare organizations that we are working with, the huge component of a communication plan is in terms of an approval cycle, both through an external regulatory organization and through the internal risk and compliance organization. And whenever you're doing that, at that point of time, you need to have a workflow engine that can help multiple people participate in the whole process in a parallel manner, and they should be working on these components and collaborating so that they can independently review and approve these documents before they actually become a part of a standard output communication. Generation of output through various sources. Certainly most of our customers today are asking for multi-channel strategy wherein they can reach out to their customers, because if they don't reach out to their customers through multi-channel strategy, I think somebody else will, and that certainly will be a revenue loss. Auditing and sampling of generated output is certainly taken as a post-output generation process, but it certainly helps an organization a lot in terms of responding to the regulatory queries, as well as in terms of having an internal audit on the entire process. A lot of organizations do outsource the output generation to the print vendors, so we have got readable adapters which they can be used in terms of interfacing and integrating with that, so that the entire process, though being outsourced, is still under the complete controls of the organization. And finally, archiving into a document management system certainly helps them with regulatory requirements whenever it is required to be given to external agencies. And the whole process certainly leads to a continuous process improvement because of the key performance indicators that we derive out of the solution and help the organization to simulate the processes for future improvements. I'll quickly take a case study of one of our customers, especially what we have taken is that a customer from a health insurance space, which is these days growing at a very, very fast pace. And the important need over there is that how to manage that growth. Because gone are those days when people are looking in for, they were expecting growth to be happening, but with the current context and the growth volumes that are happening, what is most important for them is they're actually going through a transformation. And in that transformation process, how to manage that growth with respect to the rising cost and complexity of communications. Because if an organization, take an example of an organization which is operating out of multiple states, and they have got multiple regulations for that state. In order to manage communication, which should be standardized, but still configured as per the requirements of different regulations across different states, is very important. And that's where the cost creep happens. In this example, the output communication cost of the organization is to the tune of $90 million, and for them to reduce the cost is certainly up on the curve, both from the investor's perspective as well as from the internal organizational efficiencies perspective. And in the first year of operations, they were able to reduce the cost by 15%, which certainly makes a huge difference to the organization with respect to the process corrections and in terms of the complexity that they were able to manage through this. In terms of operational efficiencies, this certainly is a parameter of what happens in the organizations today in terms of multiple people working on a template, and it's a really chaos kind of a situation in most of the organizations that we have been working with, where initially when you are actually looking at their processes, and that's the reason we actually came out with a need assessment exercise with all the customers that we work with. And this exercise essentially, takes them through an entire cycle of doing a process discovery in terms of what's the as-is process, simulating that process discovery in terms of what are the bottlenecks or where the essential corrections need to happen, to do a pilot on the top of it so as to show the capabilities as well as in terms of showcasing that how benefits will be coming to the organization. Picking up results from it, and then radiating the whole process inside the organization. Now, the help that this kind of methodology gives to an organization is in terms of there is an approach of Big Bang with which most of the organizations would like to go, and there is an approach of going with a piecemeal approach. I think the thinking should certainly be a Big Bang, but the execution side should be carried out on a piecemeal approach, wherein you try to adopt a customer communication management solution in one of the solution streams, and pick up a solution stream which would be certainly a high visibility, low investment, and which would take a less time to do, so that's to use those benefits or the KPIs out of that in order to showcase it back to the management of the benefits that you can get. And this is really based upon real life examples that we have had, in which case I think the results are better, and the acceptance from the change management perspective also is managed very well. The unified communication framework within this organization certainly helped them in terms of the quality of member care. They were able to integrate multi-channels output, and also they adopted a strategy of multilingual solutions or communication to their end customers, which was a big competitive differentiator for them as compared to how others were doing that. In terms of the customer experience management, this certainly helped them with accuracy, the right communication going to the customer, and right the first time. It certainly helped them in terms of the efficiencies and the processing times, especially from an integrated ECM and a BPM framework. Some numbers around that were that they were able to reduce the number of templates that they were generating for output communication by more than 65%. And that certainly was a big win for the operations people in the organization, because not only the process became more manageable, but most important component was that they were able to actually deliver the solutions to the end customers in much faster time. And finally, from the CMS guidelines perspective, I think the organization became completely compliant, and most of our folks from the healthcare industry can visualize this, that in case of any kind of compliance breaches, the end solution or the end outcome is in terms of sanctions. And this is what this solution really helps you to be. It really helps you to de-risk your communications to the end customers, not with manual controls or human judgment, but in terms of systems approach and process methodologies. A little bit stats on the solution in terms of the project stats for this organization reduced the start to end process in less than 90 days. And that was certainly our promise, and that's the reason of adopting a piecemeal approach so as to give them business benefits in one business quarter. They were able to extend the solution from the back office to the front office, which again was a big win for them, as now the contact center executives in this organization have ready access to the customer documents that have been created, have been routed to these customers, and when they're interacting with the customers, they are not passing on these requests back to the back office, but they have been able to reduce these kind of transactions going to the back office and answering the customer queries, or even sending the documents back to the customers in case they have not received from the same interface. So that is what we call as a unified front-end interface, which we have evolved as a solution for most of our organizations. Certainly the compliance breaches were reduced by 99%, which was certainly a big win, considering that those sleepless nights to the operations people were certainly not there anymore. Another example from one of our banking customers, wherein the strategy that the bank adopted was more from the perspective of, and the business drivers for every organization is certainly different. In this particular scenario, the bank actually wanted to do a lot of marketing stuff, and for them, upselling, cross-selling, and getting communications back to, and it was specifically in the wealth management space. The key component over there from the wealth management space was in terms of how can they reach out to their customers with innovative solutions. How can they get the documents from the reporting perspective, client reporting being one of the key components in the wealth management industry. What they did with the whole solution was that they created a stack that can give them a communication control, and that can actually pass on the information both in terms of the portfolio alerts, in terms of correspondences that go as an advice to the customers, in terms of any kind of term sheet generations, or also in terms of the client onboarding correspondences. And if you look at it from this perspective, the client really gained a lot of advantage, not only in terms of the measurable metrics, but also in terms of the strategic benefits that they got from this whole program, especially from the context of managing tailored proposals and documents sent across to customers, and the end result was in terms of maximizing the lifetime value of the customers that they had. So that's a little bit in terms of what benefits and what solutions we had in each of these spaces. And to sum it up all, I think the four basic pillars that we always consider for any organization which is in the process of looking at a customer communication management solution or thinking of strategizing this, I think the four basic pillars certainly for all these organizations would be around cost optimization, risk and compliance, revenue management, and customer experience management. And all these four are quite interlinked to one another in order to actually evolve the organization as a more customer responsive organization. So that's all from my side, and I think we can leave it open to question and answer session now.
Thanks, Ashish. That was a great presentation, and we have the questions already pouring in. I'm afraid we're running out of time, so I'll just try to squeeze in as many questions as we can. The first question today is, where does customer communication management stand in the CIO's priority list in terms of IT spending? And have you seen any change in trend? Craig, I think this is for you. Hello?
I'm sorry, so what is the question?
Okay, I repeat. Where does customer communication management stand in the CIO's priority list in terms of IT spending, and have you seen any change in the trend?
So it is not certainly one of the highest in the CIO's budget projection. So much of IT budget is absorbed by maintenance and existing commitments. I think we did a report that it was around 70% in a lot of companies. So when you look at that 30% that the company really has to invest, there's a lot of focus on the customer experience and on customer-facing applications. So CCM is part of that, but there are bigger applications that come ahead of that. So if there's an investment in customer relationship management, in analytics to help understand the customer better, I think those tend to get higher priority. But I will say that it is moving up in terms of its focus from where it was a few years ago.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. I think the clock is ticking very fast and we need to wind up. Craig and Ashish, Thank you so much for your valuable insights into customer communication management for different businesses. A big thanks to the entire audience for your valuable time and tremendous response. We have noted your questions and we shall be sending across to you the presentation and the transcript for all the questions. Goodbye and have a great day ahead.